In past years, we've used this time to talk about heavy but important topics. We've talked about hazing and brought in a mother who lost her son in a tragic hazing accident in another fraternity. We've talked about sexual assault and brought in victims of sexual violence and abuse to tell their story. But this year, we wanted to take a different approach. This year, we wanted to talk about leadership. As you heard in my bio, I live in Richmond, Virginia, and I work on the headquarters staff. And while I'm a member of the headquarters staff, I'm also a brother in this fraternity. I had a phenomenal experience at LSU. When I joined the chapter, we had 60 men. And when I graduated, we had 160 in a Buchanan Cup. We found our success by being different than the chapters that we saw on that campus. And we made our fair share of mistakes, and I'll get to those in a little bit. But I still keep up with all of the guys that I was in the chapter with. And I'm proud to go back and visit that chapter. But not everyone on headquarters staff had a great SigEp experience. This is our CEO, Brian Warren. Brian was a member of Virginia Ada at UVA. Brian endured senseless hazing in his new member experience. He was kicked, he was beat, he was spit on, he was made to eat things that you wouldn't want to talk about at your tables this afternoon. Brian doesn't talk to any of his chapter brothers, and his chapter is closed. But he wakes up every day determined to make sure that no other brother goes through the experience that he had. So why do I tell you all of this? Why do I share our experiences? Well, your experience might be like mine, or it might be like Brian's. But either way, we've been in your seat. And that's what drove my thinking for today. I thought back to when I was chapter president in 2008 in Carlson. I thought about when I was sitting around with my chapter leaders and I was getting ready to be my next chapter's president. What were the things that I needed to know? You're the top 5% of our organization, our leaders. Leaders deserve perspective. That's what I want to give you today. I'm not going to cram anything down your throats. I'm not going to use scare tactics, but I want to give you a first-hand account of what we see from our seats. I'm going to warn you, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. I see the best of SigEp, but I also see the worst. But you deserve that perspective. So my commitment to you is to be candid. And what I ask of you is to approach this conversation with an open mind and with open ears. Is that fair? All right. Jim Collins wrote the book Good to Great. Jim was one of the famous leadership gurus that has ever studied leadership. Jim looked at successful businesses across the country, and he said, what are the things that tie those businesses together? What are the things that have made them successful over time? And he included all of them in this book. Jim, if he wrote a chapter on fraternities, I would like to think that he wrote about SigEp. You heard this morning, we're not the oldest, but we've become the best. And we've become the best by doing things differently than our peers. We've got the Balanced Man Scholarship to recruit the top talent on campus. We've got the Balanced Man Program to put guys in an unparalleled experience, very different than what they've seen around them. And then we've got the residential learning community that's set up to make them better. And when you look at our history and the fraternity system's history, others have modeled our success over time, and they've copied what we've done. But Jim Collins says that successful organizations don't just boast all their accomplishments. They confront brutal facts. Brutal facts are those things that might be uncomfortable to look at, but they're the truth, and you can't shy away from the truth. So that got us thinking, if we're successful, what brutal facts do we need to confront? We came up with 4, and I want to share those with you today, and then I want to present a path forward, a path that involves all of you in this room. So the brutal facts. Number 1, the reputation of fraternities is at an all-time low. I've only been doing this 5 years, but I've talked to people that have been doing it 50, and they will say that the last 2 years in the fraternity system have been the worst 2 years. People like Atlantic, Bloomberg have all run stories, and those stories have asked a question. Are we better off without fraternities? Many have answered that question yes, and let's take a look at why.
David Bogenberger's life came to a tragic end during a hazing ritual at the Pi Kappa Alpha Fraternity House at Northern Illinois University. His death has led to 22 fraternity members being charged with violating Illinois' hazing statute.
The hazing death of a college freshman, Michael Dang, died 2 years ago after a brutal beating from his frat brothers. Now 37 people face charges, including 5 young men for murder.
Fraternity in trouble tonight after reportedly throwing a party with the theme "White Girls Only."
Disgraced, shut down, and not welcome back. A stern message from the University of Oklahoma president to the Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity after a racist video surfaced of chanting members using the N-word.
And there's one other bad little thing about fraternities. They kill people. Every year some kid dies when the hilarious dangle the pledge over the wood chipper prank goes awry. Since 1970, there's been at least one hazing-related death every year, as pledges routinely endure alcohol poisoning, sleep deprivation, waterboarding, being dressed in diapers, buried in trash, force-fed cat food. Jesus, why not just pledge ISIS? Well, hey, a cult is a cult, and that's what a frat is, a place where they strip you of your personality and rebuild it in their image. That's why when a girl says, "I'm dating a frat guy," no one ever says, "Oh yeah, what's he like?" If you think tradition is a good enough reason to paint your face or degrade women or drink yourself sick, or if you think a good place for a bottle rocket is your ass, then maybe college isn't for you to begin with. Of all the bad things fraternities do, the absolute worst is that they take young people at the exact moment when they should be learning to be individuals and turn them into shit-eating, orders-following group thinkers. Or maybe these guys all independently decided to wear shorts with a blazer and a bow tie.
That's uncomfortable to watch, isn't it? The most uncomfortable thing for me is that all of those situations are real. They all happened. And it's not just the media that are, and the talking heads that are saying things need to change. This is Kevin Kruger. Kevin Kruger is the president of NASPA. NASPA is an organization made up of university presidents and vice presidents that go to Kevin with problems and issues that they face on their campus. Brian and I sat down with Kevin a few months ago, and Kevin said this. Kevin said, "I've never seen university presidents more willing to make drastic changes to the system." And Kevin's been doing this a long time. We've seen some of those changes. This is an article about deferred recruitment. More and more campuses are saying, we can't recruit in the fall, we've got to go to the spring. What that tells me is that they don't trust us to help transition freshmen from high school to college. And I would argue that SigEp is the best place to make that happen. But universities are seeing a very, very different picture. And you can't blame them based off many of the things that have happened. But the real issue here, guys, is it's not just other fraternities. SigEp has its fair share of problems.
A lawsuit against the Yale University fraternity involved in a deadly crash will go to trial. A woman was killed back in 2011 when members of the Sigma Pi Epsilon fraternity were driving a truck with beer kegs in the back and plowed into 3 people. The family of the woman who was killed is now suing the fraternity. 2 other people were injured in that accident.
Fraternity at the University of Mississippi has been shut down after 3 members hung a noose around the neck of a statue of James Meredith, who was the school's first ever black student.
This is what the statue looks like. That's Meredith in white, in that white suit back in 2006 when the dedication happened. He is now 80 years old. Ole Miss Police Chief says authorities have identified 3 male freshmen from Georgia that they want to question, and they are working with state and federal officials about possible criminal charges.
Over the last 5 years, we've had to close 50 chapters for risky and inappropriate behavior. And over the last 8 years, our insurance rates have risen every single year, making it more expensive for all of you to be SigEps. It's tough to swallow, but it's the truth. And the question that faces me is, how does all of this happen when we've got the Balance Man Scholarship to attract the top talent on campus, we've got the Balance Man program to eliminate pledging, and we've got the residential learning community to turn bars into classrooms. From my seat, this happens when the guys in your seat ignore the things that have made us so successful. But the big question is, what's going to happen if we keep heading down this road? Which leads us to fact number 3. Change is inevitable. University presidents aren't going to put up with this much longer. They've told us that change is coming. And let's look at this quote from Kevin Kruger. Kevin said, "University presidents are looking for fraternities that are filled with men that think about the world differently and approach relationships in a healthy way." Think about the world differently. Sounds familiar, right? We can't keep doing what we've always done. The fraternity system needs a bright light to guide us through this storm. The fraternity system needs leadership, which leads us to tough fact number 4. The fate of fraternity is in your hands. The leadership that we need can't come from Richmond. Brian and I can't solve these problems. Rick Bennett and our national board can't solve these problems. Your university president can't solve these problems. The answers to these problems are in this room. The answers start with you. Let's take a listen to a few words from our Grand President, Rick Bennett, during his inaugural address at Conclave in August.
We can no longer be satisfied with setting our sights on being the best fraternity in a Greek system that is deteriorating around us. We must become the leader of all campus organizations, not just fraternities. One of the most inspiring things I have ever heard in my life was from our beloved past Grand President, Bedford Black, many years ago, when he shared his philosophy on personal responsibility in life by saying, if it is to be, it is up to me. As I consider these challenges, his words ring in my ears. I ask that you consider these challenges by asking yourself 3 questions. How will I step up and challenge risky and inappropriate behavior in my chapter? What is the value that my chapter adds to my campus as a real partner in higher education? And finally, how will we become the best organization on our campus? If it is to be, it is up to me. I hope these words ring in your ears as well.
In 1961, Bedford Black said, "If it is to be, it is up to me." And 55 years later, those words have never been more important. We are at a crossroads, and we need leadership, and the leadership has to come from you. So looking at these 4 facts, if I'm sitting in your chair, I have mixed emotions. On one hand, I see an opportunity, but on the other hand, I see a lot of doom and gloom. But like I told you at the beginning, I want to be honest with you. I want to be candid. So let's shift the discussion about, so where do we go from here? This is a big challenge, and I don't want it to paralyze you. So we're going to break this down into 2 simple frameworks. The first one is this: focus on what you can control. You can't control everything as chapter leaders. Some of you have chapters that have 150 men in them, and we don't expect for you to be able to control all of their actions every day. But there are things that you can control. I think back to my first event as chapter president. We had a date party. Girl gets so intoxicated, she goes to the hospital and is on life support for 12 hours. I was at the hospital that morning when her parents came to pick her up. I didn't sleep Sunday night just thinking about what might have happened if it had gone a few drinks further. Monday morning, I was the first appointment in the Greek life office. The Greek life director looks at me and says, "Seth, how does this happen? Control your chapter. What are you doing?" I walked out of there pretty frustrated and a little confused. I thought, what can I really do to control the actions of an 18-year-old girl that wanted to get really drunk? As days turned into weeks, I looked back on that incident and I thought, there were things that I could have controlled. I could have controlled the fact that there was a pregame that night that I knew about, where there was a lot of underage drinking that I turned a blind eye to. I could have controlled the fact that I saw Lindsay walk on the bus that night, pretty intoxicated. I didn't really stop her. I could have controlled the fact that the event that we had was centered all around drinking. And I definitely could have controlled the fact that there were no sober monitors, making sure people like her didn't go off the deep end. Focus on what you can control. Look at the situations and prevent them. Second framework, behavior is a function of people in the environment. Lewin's equation. Behavior is a function of people in the environment. So let's focus on what we can control, and let's break down people in the environment. Start with people. Model the way. People watch what you do, people watch what you say, and then they make a decision. Do I want to follow that person, or do I want to take off running in the other direction? If we model the way, others will follow. Values-based recruitment. This really comes down to, we want to recruit guys with alcohol and attract guys that are attracted to that experience? Or do we want to say, look, the fraternity experience is going to be fun, but let's talk about the Balance Man program. Let's talk about the residential learning community. Let's talk about how you're going to be a better person after 4 years. Once these top talent, the best guys that you can find, get in your chapter, we have to set clear expectations for people. We have to let them know what's black and white. They're 18 to 22 years old. People are going to make mistakes, but we need to let them know what's expected of them. And then last but not least, engage alumni, volunteers in the university in your experience. You shouldn't go about this alone. You've got a lot to do. Get them to help you out. Environment. Winston Churchill said, we build our buildings, and then our buildings build us. These are 3 pictures of SigEp houses. The ones on the left, model residential learning communities. The one on the right is when I walked in one Saturday morning. Which environment represents our values? Which environment attracts the top talent on campus? But environment is more than just a physical space. Environment is about culture. As chapter leaders, what do we celebrate? In chapter meetings, are we celebrating the guys that hooked up with a girl and they can't remember her name the next day? Are we celebrating the guys that went above and beyond to live out virtue, diligence, and brotherly love? Are we celebrating guys that go out every single night? Or are we celebrating guys that make sure that brothers make it safely when they drink responsibly? And the experience that we have, does it make them better for being a part of our fraternity, or do their grades suffer? And when our brothers do fall, and when they fall out of line, do we hold them accountable for their actions, or do we turn a blind eye and say, God, they're my friend. I don't want to have that tough conversation. Environment's about culture. Focus on the things that we can control. People, environment. Guys, the question remains, do we want to make change, or do we want drastic change to happen for us? These are tough questions as we reflect on the journey that's ahead. And if we confront these brutal facts and we're honest with ourselves, we know that we have a lot of work to do. But if we focus on these 2 frameworks, on the things that we can control, people and behavior, we can make a difference on our campuses. And that will change the behavior inside of our chapters. Grand President Bennett is right. The fraternity system is at a crossroads, and it needs leadership. And that leadership comes from all of you. He asked a really important question in that video clip that we watched. How will your chapter become the best student organization, not fraternity, best student organization on your campus? Leaders make commitments. At the beginning, I committed to being candid and thorough. It's your time to make a commitment. You've got sticky notes and pens on your tables. I want you to take a second to think about how you will help your chapter become the best student organization on campus. One thing. It's not at the national level. It's something that you can do to affect the people and the environment back at home. Guys, I love this quote from past Grand President Steve Shanklin. He says that success is the relentless pursuit of simple objectives. The things that you wrote down are simple, but they're important. The relentless pursuit of those things are where heroes are made. And SigEp needs heroes. This was the cover of our fall journal. And the theme was just that, SigEp needs heroes. The man on the cover of this fall journal is one of my heroes, Philip Cox. Phil was our 57th Grand Chapter President, and he was also one of our best. Phil passed away a few weeks ago, but his legacy remains, and his legacy's in this room. When Phil was Grand Chapter President, he traveled all around the country meeting with undergraduate leaders like yourselves. He took time out of business trips to sit down at exec board tables with chapter leaders, roll up his sleeves and say, what are the problems that we're facing on this campus? And he found solutions to help solve them. As conclave hit and he rolled out of Grand President, his condition worsened. But still, I got CC'd on emails to 18 to 22-year-olds asking, what are you guys doing to follow up on these commitments? Makes you wonder, what's a guy that has terminal cancer doing, talking to college kids that he's hardly ever met and asking them to follow through on commitments? And if Phil was with us today, what would he share? I'll let him answer that question.
The past few years, we've had to close too many chapters due to frat boy behavior. In every case, it felt, to me at least, like a stab to the heart of Sigma Phi Epsilon. I think of the many young men who won't have the chance to experience a fraternity like I have, won't know the life-changing impact it can have, won't know the good times and the lifelong support network it brings. So let's not let that happen. I'm here tonight to ask our undergraduate brothers to be proactive in their brotherly love. You see, I believe brotherly love isn't just a feeling. Sometimes it's a decision. It's a decision to spend a little more of your budget on member development and community service, helping those that are less fortunate than us. It's a decision to enforce your academic standards for all those brothers whose lives are out of balance, but can get back on track with a little tough love from you. It's a decision to confront the brother who wants to be more fratty, more old school, more TFM, who wants to make the new guys earn it by hazing them just a little bit. And it's a decision to go to that brother who's clearly misusing alcohol. Tell him you love him and that there's a better way. That's brotherly love. That's how you can protect the future of your chapter and your brothers. And when we do that, people will take notice. Everyone will see that we live and breathe our values and principles. New recruits, parents, alumni, and university officials will be drawn to us like moths to a flame. They will say, you guys really are different, and you stand for something. So let's go out there and show the world who we are and what we believe in. Let's live our values every day. Let's spread the word that SigEp is different. Let's bring more men into our brotherhood and help them learn the balanced man ideal and the power of our cardinal principles. And then we will reach our full potential.
Brothers, the fate of fraternity is in your hands. Let's be proactive with our brotherly love. Let's honor Phil's legacy, and let's be the heroes that SigEp so desperately needs. Thank you.